What if I told you that in 2025, one of the most important adventure bikes for the American market doesn't come with a sky-high European price tag, but instead rolls out of Honda's lineup for under $10,000? Think about that for a second. In a world where most middleweight adventure bikes cost anywhere from 11 to 14 grand, Honda is offering something that promises to do it all: commute, explore trails, and even cross the country for less money than most. People spend on a used car. That's a bold claim, right? Because if you've been around the adventure bike scene in the US, you know it's been dominated by a few key players. Yamaha has the beloved Tenor 700, Suzuki launched the V-Strom 800DE, KTM keeps pushing the 890 Adventure, and BMW still holds a premium spot with the F850 GS. All these bikes are capable, all of them are proven, but all of them come at a higher price. So the big question is this: has Honda really created the perfect middleweight adventure bike for America? That's the question we're going to explore, and the answer might surprise you. To really understand why this matters, you need to know where Honda stood in this category until recently. For years, they had a strange gap in their US lineup. On one end, the Africa Twin, big, powerful, and over 500 pounds. On the other, the small but scrappy CRF 300L Rally. And in between, nothing. Riders in the States had no true Honda option. In that golden middleweight sweet spot where bikes are light enough to take off-road but powerful enough for touring. That absence allowed Yamaha, Suzuki, KTM, and BMW to carve up the market. But in 2024, Honda brought back a legendary name, the Transalp. Older riders might remember it back in the late 1980s. The Transalp came to America as a 583cc V-twin. It didn't stay long, but it earned a cult following. People still talk about how comfortable, versatile, and surprisingly capable that bike was. Fast forward to now, and Honda is reviving the name for a new generation, this time with a 755cc parallel twin. And the 2025 model isn't just a reintroduction, it's an update that answers real feedback from riders. The updates may sound small on paper, but they address the little things that riders actually notice. Suspension settings revised to smooth out both on-road and off-road rides. A brand new 5-inch TFT display that's brighter and easier to use. A reshaped windscreen that gives better wind protection, and fresh LED headlights for modern style and function. All improvements that make the bike more practical, more comfortable, and more appealing to American riders. And the kicker? The price hasn't changed. It still sits at just $9,999 MSRP. That's nearly $2,000 cheaper than the V-Strom 800DE, almost $1,000 less than the Tenor 700, and a massive gap compared to KTM or BMW. For riders who want to get into adventure touring without draining their savings, that's a game changer. Of course, none of this would matter if the bike itself didn't deliver. Price alone isn't enough. You need performance, reliability, and that spark of fun that makes an adventure bike more than just transportation. And that brings us to the heart of the machine. Its engine dot at the center of the Transalp is a 755cc parallel twin, the same one found in Honda's CB750 Hornet. Now, the adventure community in America has had mixed feelings about parallel twins over the years. Some riders love them, others swear by V-twins or boxer engines. But here's the truth. The parallel twin has quietly become the standard in the middleweight ADV world. Why? Because it's simple, efficient, and delivers exactly the kind of torque riders need both on and off the pavement. Honda designed this engine with a unicam setup, 4 valves per cylinder, and a 270-degree crankshaft. That crank layout is important. It mimics the power pulses of a V-twin, giving the bike a more characterful feel and plenty of low-end grunt. For fuel delivery, it uses Honda's reliable PGM FI system. And unlike the CB750 Hornet, the Transalp's exhaust silencer is styled in a more traditional way that not only looks, right on an ADV bike, but also gives a bit more clearance when you're bouncing over rocks or riding through ruts. What really sets this engine apart is how versatile it feels in real riding. Around town, in places like Los Angeles or New York City traffic, the smooth torque makes pulling away from stoplights effortless. The clutch is light, the throttle response is predictable, and it never feels like you're wrestling with the bike. But when the road opens up and you head into mountain twisties like the Tail of the Dragon or climb through the Rockies, the engine reveals its sporty side. It pulls hard out of corners, revs willingly, and thanks to the standard up and down quick shifter, it keeps you engaged without ever feeling like a chore. And here's the twist most riders don't expect at this price point. That quick shifter isn't an accessory or an expensive add-on, it's included. For under 10 grand, you're getting a feature that BMW and KTM usually reserve for bikes thousands of dollars more. That's the kind of detail that makes the Transalp feel like more than just a budget option. But the real surprise comes when you leave the pavement behind. Parallel twins shine off-road, and this one is no exception. With plenty of low-end torque, you can crawl over rocks, ease through sand, and climb steep dirt trails without worrying about stalling. In many cases, you can stay in second gear, letting the bike's smooth power delivery manage traction while you focus on your line. Riders who tried the gravel mode will appreciate how it allows just enough rear wheel spin to keep things fun without getting sideways. But when you turn traction control off completely, the Transalp shows its true off-road personality. It feels planted, predictable, and most importantly light enough to manage when the trail gets tricky. All of this raises the same question we asked at the beginning. Is this really the middleweight adventure bike that American riders have been waiting for? It's affordable, it's versatile, and it carries a legendary name that deserves to be back in the conversation. But a bike isn't defined by specs and history alone. It's defined by how it feels when you're actually riding across the country, or carving through fire roads, or spending hours in the saddle. And that's exactly what we're going to uncover next. Asterisk. When you throw a leg over the Transalp for the first time, the first thing you notice is how approachable it feels. Some adventure bikes can be intimidating, tall, heavy, and a bit awkward at low speeds. The Transalp, though, strikes a balance that feels welcoming even if you're not a pro rider. At 463 pounds with a full tank, it's nearly 50 pounds lighter than Honda's own Africa Twin, and that difference matters. Whether you're backing the bike out of a parking spot in town or trying to wrestle it through a rocky trail in the backcountry, less weight means less stress. On American highways, the bike feels composed and smooth. Roll onto Interstate 70 cutting across Kansas, or head down the Pacific Coast Highway in California, and the Transalp eats up the miles without complaint. The revised suspension settings for 2025 play a big role here. Honda tweaked the damping in both the Showa fork and shock to make the ride more controlled without sacrificing comfort. On the freeway, it feels planted. Hit a series of bumps, and the bike soaks them up instead of tossing you around. Push harder on a twisty road, maybe the famous Tail of the Dragon with its 318 curves in 11 miles, and the suspension holds its line confidently. There's little wallowing, no vague feedback, just a sense that the chassis is working with you. And that's the beauty of this bike on pavement. It doesn't just handle the boring stuff like droning down the highway, it actually feels fun. When the road gets interesting, the 61.5-inch wheelbase and 27-degree rake keep it stable, yet agile enough to flick through corners. Compared to bigger DV machines, it feels less like you're piloting a bus and more like you're actually riding a motorcycle that wants to dance. But let's be honest, adventure bikes are judged as much by what they can do off-road as they are on asphalt. And this is where the Transalp really shows how well Honda thought this through. Imagine you're riding in Utah, heading into Moab. The paved roads turn to gravel, and soon you're navigating sand, rocks, and ruts. This is where some bigger bikes start to feel like a handful. But the Transalp's combination of weight, torque, and suspension makes it surprisingly manageable. The show-off fork gives you 7.9 inches of travel up front, while the shock offers 7.5 inches at the rear. It's not enduro-level performance, but it's more than enough for dirt roads, rocky climbs, and even some light jumps. Sure, if you launch it off a big water bar at high speed, you'll bottom out, but that's true for most bikes in this class. What's more impressive is how the electronics work in real-world situations. Honda gave the Transalp multiple ride modes: Sport, Standard, Rain, Gravel, and a customizable user mode. In Gravel, the bike allows a little slip at the rear wheel, which keeps things safe and predictable. But for riders who want full control, switching traction control off and rear ABS off unlocks a more raw, connected feel. That's when the bike comes alive on loose terrain. Second gear becomes your best friend, giving you enough torque to climb hills or cut through soft sand without constantly slipping the clutch. The tires play a role too. While the stock setup is more street-focused, many riders will swap to something like the Bridgestone Battlax Adventure Cross for better bite in the dirt. With the right tires and the electronics dialed in, the Transalp feels more capable than you might expect from a sub $10,000 adventure machine. Ergonomics matter just as much off-road as on. When standing on the pegs, the handlebar height feels natural, no need to hunch awkwardly. The seat, set at 33.7 inches, is tall but not unmanageable. And for shorter riders, Honda offers an accessory seat that drops it down to 32.6. The peg-to-seat ratio keeps your knees comfortable on long rides, while the redesigned windscreen offers solid protection at highway speeds. In fact, riders wearing dual sport or motocross-style helmets will appreciate how little buffeting there is, something that often ruins long highway slogs on other bikes. Now let's talk electronics, because Honda has clearly modernized the Transalp. For 2025, the new 5-inch TFT display is crisp, even when covered in dust. Navigating through menus with the left bar control pod is simple and intuitive. Bluetooth connectivity through the RoadSync app gives you access to navigation, calls, and music, though you'll need a compatible helmet comm system to make the mix. Most of it, there are, however, two glaring omissions. First, there's no cruise control. For riders in America, where highways stretch hundreds of miles, cruise control is more than just a luxury. It's practically a necessity. Honda already has ride-by-wire on this bike, so it feels like a missed opportunity not to include it. Second, the wheels are tube-type instead of tubeless. That means fixing a puncture on the side of the road in the middle of Nevada isn't as simple as plugging the tire. You'll need to pull the wheel, break the B, and patch or replace the tube. For many American riders, that's a deal breaker, especially when tubeless wheels are becoming standard on many competitors. The USB port is another small frustration. Instead of being mounted on the dash, where you can easily plug in a phone or GPS, it's under the seat. Not exactly practical for charging your device while riding across state lines. These aren't fatal flaws, but they are the kinds of details that American buyers notice. Still, for everything the Transalp lacks, it makes up for it with usability and balance. It's the kind of bike that can take you from commuting in downtown Chicago to carving canyon roads in California and then straight into the backcountry of Colorado. It's approachable for newer ADV riders, yet fun enough for veterans who want a lighter machine than the Africa Twin. And in a market where many bikes feel specialized either too road focused or too off-road focused, the Transalp lands squarely in the middle, which might just be its greatest strength. Of course, no motorcycle exists in a vacuum. And while the Transalp feels impressive on its own, the real test is how it stacks up against its rivals in the American market. Because at the end of the day, riders here are spoiled for choice. Yamaha, Suzuki, BMW, KTM, they all have strong options. So the question remains, with all these choices, is the Transalp truly the best value, or is it just another middleweight contender? To really understand what Honda has achieved with the Transalp, you need to line it up against the competition in America. This is where the story gets interesting, because on paper, the specs tell one part of the truth, but the riding experience and the price tag tell another. Let's start with the Yamaha Tenor 700, because in the US, it has become the darling of the adventure crowd. Riders love it for its simplicity, ruggedness, and off-road chops. The T7 comes in at just under 73 horsepower, weighs almost the same as the Transalp, and has proven reliability. But here's the catch. The Yamaha costs $10,799. That's nearly $1,000 more than the Honda. And it doesn't come with some of the creature comforts the Transalp offers, like a quick shifter or the more advanced TFT display. For purists, the Tenor is still appealing, but when you factor in value, Honda makes a strong argument. Next is the Suzuki V-Strom 800DE. Suzuki hit the US market hard with this bike, positioning it as a versatile ADV that blends comfort with dirt capability. The V-Strom pushes out about the same power as the Transalp, has a decent electronics package, and solid suspension travel. But at $11,499, it's almost $1,500 more expensive. And once again, no standard quick shifter. For some riders, that difference might not matter, but in a country where every dollar counts, Honda's aggressive pricing puts pressure on Suzuki. Now let's move to the premium European machines. BMW's F850 GS is a staple in the ADV community. It delivers more horsepower, around 90, and comes with features like tubeless wheels, advanced electronics, and the cachet of the BMW badge. But here's the reality. Its starting price is $13,595. And most riders know you'll end up paying closer to $15,000 once you add options. That's more than $5,000 above the Transalp's price. KTM's 890 Adventure is in a similar boat. It's an incredible machine with about 100 horsepower, razor-sharp handling, and true off-road pedigree. But it starts at $13,949. And again, with accessories and options, the real-world price climbs even higher. This is where Honda's strategy becomes clear. They're not trying to beat BMW or KTM at the premium game. They're not chasing the hardcore Yamaha purists who want nothing but simplicity. Instead, they're carving out the middle ground, a bike that gives you enough power for long-distance touring, enough agility for off-road exploring, modern features that make everyday riding easier, and a price that makes the whole package accessible. So now we return to the question we asked at the very beginning. Is the Transalp the perfect middleweight ADV bike for America? The answer depends on what you value most. If you demand every premium feature cruise control, tubeless wheels, the absolute highest horsepower, then maybe you'll lean toward KTM or BMW. If you're a diehard who wants the simplest machine possible, Yamaha still makes a compelling case. But for the vast majority of riders and the UC people who want to commute during the week, hit the twisties on the weekend, and occasionally disappear into the backcountry, the Transalp checks more boxes than anything else in its price range. Yes, it has a couple of shortcomings. The absence of cruise control is a missed opportunity, especially in a country where highway travel is such a big part of the riding experience. And the tube-type wheels will frustrate riders who expect tubeless convenience. But these flaws don't overshadow what the bike does right. The engine is versatile and fun. The chassis is stable yet agile. The suspension revisions make it comfortable on-road and capable off-road. And the ergonomics strike a sweet spot between long-distance comfort and off-road control. For under $10,000, Honda has built a motorcycle that can stand toe-to-toe with bikes costing thousands more. And that, more than anything else, is why the 2025 Transalp is such a big deal in the American market. It's not just another bike, it's a signal that adventure riding doesn't have to be reserved for people with deep pockets or hardcore skill sets. It's a bike that says, yes, you can do this. You can ride cross-country. You can explore the Rockies. You can chase dirt trails in the desert. Picture this. loading up the Transalp in Denver, pointing it west across the Rockies, dropping into Utah's Red Canyons, then cruising through the Mojave Desert before finally watching the Pacific crash against the cliffs along Highway 1. 1 bike, one price, and the freedom to go anywhere. That's what Honda is selling here. And that's why the Transalp may very well be the best balanced adventure bike in America right now. So the final word? If you're looking for a machine that blends affordability, capability, and Honda reliability, the Transalp deserves a spot at the very top of your list. It's not just about specs or features, it's about balance. The right balance of power, weight, comfort, and price. And balance, as every adventure rider knows, is what keeps you moving forward no matter what the road or the trail throws your way. And now the question is yours. If you had to choose today, would you go for the new Transalp, stick with the tried and true Yamaha T7, or spend big on a BMW or KTM? Drop your thoughts below, because the conversation about the perfect middleweight ADV bike in America is just getting started.